Her so-called best friend decided to take a shot at me right in the middle of dinner. Said she could do a lot better than me. I didn't let it slide. I shut him down in front of everyone at the table. That's when she lost it. Told me I either apologized or we were done. I just smiled back at her. I didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't say a word. But when she finally came home weeks later, she understood exactly what done actually means. For 3 years, my life with Emily was good. Honestly, it was great. I'm a lawyer, and my days are spent dealing with people at their worst. Liars, manipulators, every ugly side of human nature. Walking through the door to her at night felt like finally getting clean air. Emily worked as a paralegal. Sharp, ambitious, driven. She had this constant hunger to go to law school and prove herself, to build something that mattered. That fire was one of the things I loved most about her. We felt like a unit, a real team. We were building a future together in a house I'd spent years restoring with my own hands. It felt solid, permanent. I wasn't just covering rent for a girlfriend. I was investing in the woman I planned to marry. Still, there was always this background noise. Like static you couldn't quite tune out. Something small, but always there. And that static had a name. Mark. Mark was her best friend from college. A graphic designer. One of those guys who called himself an artist and talked like a regular job was beneath him. Meanwhile, he scraped by designing menus for taco places just to make rent. According to Emily, he was her ride or die. Her platonic soulmate. The guy who looked out for her. From where I stood, he was a parasite with an ego problem. Undermining our relationship wasn't an accident for him. It was a hobby. And to be fair, he was good at it. He never crossed a line you could point to directly. Everything was indirect. Side comments. Backhanded compliments. Little poison pills wrapped in friendly smiles. Her ex, Ryan, a musician who broke her heart years ago, was his favorite tool. If I took Emily on a real vacation, say, Mexico, Mark would suddenly reminisce about some random camping trip they once took together. "Remember that, Emily?" he'd say, all nostalgic. You can't plan moments like that. You just have to be with someone who understands your free spirit. The implication was always crystal clear. I was the safe, boring option. He was the gatekeeper to the exciting life she'd supposedly given up. And Emily bought it. Completely. She fell for his protective best friend routine every time. The second I suggested he was out of line, she jumped to his defense. That's just Mark. He was there for me when Ryan destroyed me. He's just worried about me. He's family, Jake. I'm a patient man. You have to be, in my profession. You don't react to the first red flag. You wait. You listen. You let people talk long enough to expose themselves. Eventually, they always hand you the rope. I waited for Mark to do exactly that. And he did, about a month ago. I just wrapped up the biggest case of my career. 6 brutal months. No sleep. No weekends. Living off coffee and paperwork. But we won. It was a major victory, for me and for my firm. So I decided to celebrate properly. I hosted a dinner at the house. Invited my closest friends, the ones I'd barely seen for half a year. And because I was still trying to be reasonable, I told Emily to invite her friends too. Which, of course, meant Mark was coming. The night started off perfect. Good people, a full house, expensive wine I'd been saving for years. For the first time in a long while, I was actually relaxed. Mark wasted no time helping himself. Free drinks, free food, acting like the place belonged to him. A few glasses in, he decided it was time to perform. He launched into a long, self-important rant about some art exhibit. Really just an excuse to lecture everyone about the difference between creators and corporate suits. And that's when everything finally snapped. It's just a different way of seeing the world, he said, staring straight at me. Some of us are led by passion, by art. Others are more practical. He took his time, lifting my glass and taking a slow, deliberate sip of my wine. My friends knew exactly what he was doing. They were shooting him looks sharp enough to cut glass. I didn't react. I just smiled tightly and kept my mouth shut. That only encouraged him. He turned toward Emily, slipping into his fake concerned best friend routine. "I just hope you're really happy, Emily," he said, laying the sincerity on thick. "I mean, Jake is a good guy. He's stable. He provides." Then he said it again, reliable, like it was something you'd scrape off your shoe. He paused, locked eyes with me, and let a smug little grin crawl across his face. "But let's be honest. She could do way better than you." And there it was. The rope. The entire table went dead quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. My friends looked like they were seconds away from jumping across the table. Emily just stared down at her plate, cheeks flushed. She wasn't angry at him. She was embarrassed that he'd made things awkward. That's when everything snapped into focus for me. The patient lawyer disappeared. The guy who'd just been openly disrespected in his own home by a man freeloading off his generosity stepped aside. Someone else took over. I set my fork and knife down slowly, folded my hands on the table. Then I looked straight at Mark. The friendly host was gone. The prosecutor had walked up to the podium. "That's a bold statement, Mark," I said quietly. My voice was calm, almost soft. "I'd love to hear your reasoning. Your professional opinion." I tilted my head. "What exactly does a better man for Emily look like? Be specific. Lay out the qualifications." He froze, completely unprepared. He'd been expecting a blow-up, not a controlled interrogation. "Well, he stumbled. "Someone more on her level. A creative. Someone who really understands her." "I see," I said, nodding. "So creativity is the main requirement. Interesting." I leaned back slightly. "And I'm guessing you believe you fit that description?" "I understand her better than anyone," he said, puffing his chest out. "Perfect," I replied. "So you're the benchmark. Let's test that theory. And let's move past vibes and talk about something measurable. Let's talk about investment." Everyone at the table knew Emily was in her second year of law school. Top-tier program. Massive tuition. "I'm paying for it," I said. "All of it." "That's an investment of money, sure, but it's also an investment of trust. Trust in her, and in the future we're building." I looked directly at him. "So my question, Mark, since you're the gold standard here, is this: what have you invested in her future lately, besides your constant criticism of me?" His face drained of color. Emily shot me a frantic look. "Jake, please don't," she whispered. I raised a hand without breaking eye contact. "I'm not finished." "Let's talk about her car," I continued. "It's safe, dependable, gets her to school and back without issues. I bought it for her." I paused. "Now you have a car too, don't you, Mark? That little convertible that's always breaking down." I gave a small nod. "In fact, Emily has loaned you money for repairs at least 3 times in the last 6 months. Money she pulled from our household account." I let that sit. An account I'm the only one contributing to. "So in a very real way," I added evenly, "I'm not just funding Emily's future. I'm also keeping your artist lifestyle on the road." "You're welcome." One of my friends snorted before quickly pretending to cough. Mark looked like he'd just been slapped. "And finally," I said, leaning forward, lowering my voice even more. "Let's talk about this house," I said. "The roof over her head. I own it. I pay the mortgage. I handle the repairs when things break." I glanced at Mark. "You, on the other hand, have been late on rent so many times that Emily has had to bail you out, again, using money I earned." I paused, then nodded slowly. "So let me make sure I understand your argument. Not for the jury." I gave a brief look around the table. "For everyone sitting here. Your position is that a man who provides a stable home, a dependable car, and fully pays for a top-tier law school education is somehow the wrong choice for Emily. And that a better man," I continued evenly, "is someone who's a financial sinkhole, drains her resources, and repays her kindness by actively trying to destroy her relationship, out of what can only be described as a sad, obvious, and deeply uncomfortable obsession." I leaned back in my chair. "Is that a fair summary of your position, Mark?" That was it. Closing argument delivered. The room went completely still. Mark looked finished, like a witness who'd just been dismantled under oath. He sat there staring at nothing, humiliated, unable to form a response. I glanced at my friends. Every one of them was looking at him with open disgust. Then I looked at Emily. Her face was a mess of emotions, but the one that broke through wasn't relief. It wasn't appreciation. It was rage. She shot up from her chair, the legs screeching across the floor. Her whole body was trembling. "I can't believe you just did that," she hissed. "You humiliated him in front of everyone." "He humiliated himself," I said, exhaustion creeping into my voice. "I just laid out the facts." "Apologize," she snapped, eyes burning straight through me. "Right now? Apologize to my best friend." Then she said it. "Apologize, or we're done." There it was. The ultimatum. The final piece of evidence. She was standing next to a man who'd just been exposed for exactly what he was, and she was protecting him. She wasn't confused. She was choosing. The love I felt for her didn't fade. It didn't weaken. It was executed on the spot. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw everything clearly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just smiled. Small. Sad. Final. I didn't say another word. I stood up, picked up my wine glass, and walked into the kitchen, leaving her alone in the dead-silent dining room. The case was closed. Verdict delivered. What followed happened fast. Emily and Mark left together, wrapped in drama. She moved in with him that very night, clearly a decision fueled by anger and his bruised ego. In her head, she'd drawn a line in the sand. She was waiting for me to beg, to apologize, to fix what I'd supposedly broken. She didn't realize I had simply accepted her terms. For 2 weeks, I vanished. No calls returned. No replies to the angry messages that turned confused, then desperate. I ignored the friends she sent to speak on her behalf. I became a ghost. Instead of chasing her, I went to work. The house, what I'd once thought of as our home, felt like a crime scene. One weekend, I calmly packed every single thing she owned into boxes. Not out of anger. Out of closure. I wasn't grieving. I was executing. Settling the remains of a dead relationship. When I finished, I stacked the boxes neatly in the spare room, changed every lock, and reset the security system. That's when over became real. After that night, I made 2 phone calls. Neither one was pleasant, but both were unavoidable. They weren't emotional decisions. They were the logical consequences of the verdict she handed down at that dinner. The first call was to the dean of admissions at her law school. I knew him well through alumni work. I explained, calmly and professionally, that due to a permanent change in my personal circumstances, the private scholarship fund I had created to cover Emily's tuition was being terminated. Effective immediately. The second call was to the managing partner at my firm. I'd pulled strings to get Emily a highly competitive summer internship there. One of those opportunities that can define an entire career. I explained that a serious and irreconcilable personal conflict of interest had arisen, and the offer needed to be withdrawn. I didn't enjoy doing it. But my support for her career was built on the assumption that we were partners. She'd taken a sledgehammer to that assumption. She could no longer live in my house. Exactly 2 weeks after the dinner, she showed up at my door. I watched through the security camera as she tried her key, her confusion slowly turning into frustration when it didn't work. Eventually, she rang the bell. I opened the door with the security chain still on. She looked rough. The righteous anger was gone. What was left was exhaustion and panic. Living with a broke, self-absorbed artist had clearly been a reality check. "Jake, we need to talk," she said. "No. Emily, we don't," I replied evenly. "You made your choice. This conversation is over. You can't throw away 3 years over one fight," she begged, tears starting to well up. "It wasn't a fight," I said. "It was a moment of truth. You were given a clear choice between your partner and the man who was actively trying to sabotage our relationship. You chose him. You demanded I apologize to him. You defended the parasite. That's not something I can undo." She started to panic when she realized I wasn't backing down. "But everything we planned," she said shakily. "Law school, the internship." "Yes, about that," I said, letting the silence stretch just long enough. "Your final tuition payment is due next week, right? I hope you and Mark have a plan, because my investment in our future has ended." Her face drained of color. "What?" she whispered. "And the internship at my firm," I continued, steady and unflinching. "That offer has been rescinded. The firm takes conflicts of interest very seriously." She actually stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth. That internship was her golden ticket. The future she'd been counting on was dissolving in real time. "You can't do this," she whispered. "Jake, please. You can't." "I already did," I said. "Actions have consequences. You gave me an ultimatum. Apologize, or we're over." I chose over. Now you live with the consequences. "Go ask Mark for help," I added quietly. "The man who's so much better than me. I'm sure his creative genius includes a plan to cover your $50,000 tuition and replace the career you just lost." Then I closed the door. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel devastated. I felt calm. The trial was finished. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. Emily had to drop out of law school just months before graduating. The dream was gone. Last I heard, She and Mark are still living together in his tiny apartment. Friends tell me it's its own kind of misery. She resents him for what he cost her. He's stuck with a woman who's a constant reminder of his own failures. He got the girl, but he got a broken version he can't afford to fix. I didn't do any of this out of revenge. I did it for myself. A relationship is a contract, and she violated the most basic clause of all: loyalty. What I did wasn't punishment. It was enforcement. She wanted to know what done really means. Now she does. It means the support stops, the investment ends, and the builder walks away, leaving you standing in the wreckage of the house you helped burn down.